Hello and welcome to Buildings of Tomorrow. My name is John Lester, and in today's episode we're talking about fire safety and all the different applications where we see fire safety popping up in different industries around the world. I'm joined today by Carsten Liesener. He is the head of the Solution and Services Division of Siemens Smart Infrastructure in Europe. Carsten, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, we talked a little bit about fire safety, and obviously it's such an important part of keeping us as a society safe, where we live, where we work, where so many important parts of our culture and our history are also kept. But it's not just those standard applications, those standard places like the office roof at work or within your apartment where fire safety is important. There's lots of different applications and industries that we might not think about where fire safety is really, really essential to continue and maintain business operation. Can you give us a couple of examples from your perspective on some of those applications and industries?
Yeah, sure, certainly. I mean, I think the most obvious one, but not everybody is aware of. For example, when you travel, I mean, in current Corona crisis days, this is not possible. But if you would be in an Airbus, flying in an Airbus plane in the future again, this is protected by our fire detection technology. Which has actually to comply with high regulation measures you have to deal with and comply with. So in each and every Airbus, our fire detection system is part of the plane, so to say. And then other things where maybe people are not so much aware of is in wind parks, especially offshore wind parks and the windmills. We are protecting the windmills and offshore is definitely also a challenge to have it kind of remotely serviced, because you cannot actually go out and fix it on site, so to say. Or, for example, the gas turbines or batteries in trains. We are active. So. Very different applications we have, outside of a normal building or an office or at home where you see actually a detector at the ceiling.
Perfect. Why don't we take the opportunity to just dive into each one of those in a little more detail, without going down to the technical bits and bytes, but I'd be interested to understand, if we start with the Airbus, the planes, I'm assuming this is just not to make sure no one's having a cigarette in the bathroom. There's more to it than this, I guess.
No, it's, I mean, but it's a very important one. The bathroom is a very important one, I can tell you. But it's really in the bathroom. It's also in the cargo area of the plane, which is very, very important. And coming back to regulation and how kind of good the technology has to be, because I mean planes are flying also into into the Middle East, where you have actually really the sand of the deserts and really when you open the cargo room, so it always has to comply with the different circumstances you have. So the airline industry has kind of high demands when it comes to technology, and what we are protecting is really the bathroom, the cockpit, the cargo room. So very much also holistically in a way what we are doing there.
Definitely. And technically that would be a huge challenge, because as you mentioned, you open the cargo hold at one end and maybe there is sand or a very warm, humid environment. You take off and all of a sudden it's cold and you land somewhere where it's snowing. Things would change so much so quickly within a space that you wouldn't see reflected in a normal building, as an example.
And you really have to trust your own technology. And also you're dealing with all the tests. Airbus is actually ask us to do with the technology, because you can imagine, I mean, it's a different story if you have a false alarm in a building, which is also unfortunate that you have to leave the building, but in a plane, you definitely have to ground the plane, or and so you have no way to just evacuate the people other than going down with the plane immediately.
Yeah. Understand. That would be, leaving the building is not the most fun thing to do, particularly for a false alarm, but having to land a plane in an emergency situation halfway during your trip to then load everyone off and check everything to make sure it's okay, reset, and then reload and take off again is a huge inconvenience to everyone involved.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, the next one that you mentioned was wind parks, I think. So we're talking about wind turbines and wind energy generation.
Yeah, because I think most of us, we already have seen kind of this burning machine room, so to say, of the windmill. And this is definitely also protected by fire safety. So the detection and also that you have to kind of remote service it, especially when it comes to offshore wind parks. So also there a big challenge because especially for offshore, they are in the middle of the sea. It's salty, salt water, and also there the technology has to comply with all the circumstances which could happen. And especially the service piece is kind of a challenge because you have to really allow it to do it really remotely in the best possible way.
Yeah, I could imagine, particularly that offshore, as you mentioned, it's not like you can jump in the car and pop by and check things. They really are often in the middle of nowhere, a long way away from any human interaction to be able to verify or take action if required.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there when you really have to send somebody on site, this is kind of a certain certificate you need.
Yeah.
That you can actually out of a helicopter or whatever can actually enter the windmill. And you also kind of the onshore you need a kind of a certain certification for the service technicians to do the service or do the installation.
That job is not something that I want to have, I don't think.
No.
Beautiful. And one of the other ones you mentioned was trains. I think I like this one because it probably has some significant differences, even though it is in the travel industry, let's call it, to planes. But it's also nothing that I would think about. Obviously, we need to have some fire safety systems within a train because we have kitchens, we have a whole heap of different stuff which could cause an issue in that situation. Can you give us a bit of detail about the train application?
Yeah, I mean, there's very much the same technology. I mean, you need an early detection, which is then also not false alarms. It's really a real detection of a fire, and then it's the normal the detector, the panel you have in the train, and also extinguishing, for example, in the locomotives. So it's also depending a little bit on a kind of a train type. You're protecting, you have different technology, and also maybe not as much as in the airline industry, but also for trains, you have really high requirements on the technology, because also there, I mean, if you leave the train, for example, in I don't know, in Russia, and you have -40 degrees, then it should also function when you then put the trains then back to back into business. So also there, it's really, there are certain requirements, because you, for example, you cannot actually heat up the trains when they are actually waiting somewhere. So the car bodies before they actually hooked up to the train afterwards again.
Mm. Yeah, I guess it comes with a whole set of its own challenges. As you mentioned, you still have huge temperature differences. You have different functionality, like we talked about before. You can have a fossil fuel driven locomotive or an electric or a combination, a hybrid between the two. You can have a kitchen where it's not like a plane where they're heating things up perhaps or boiling some water, but they have a full blown kitchen with all of the the inherent risks that come with deep frying and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then when maybe another example is, I mean, what I said in terms of offshore with salty water. I mean, here in the trains you have also the issue of vibration. Yeah. So you also have to master this one. that the detection is really functioning in a proper way.
And a huge risk, or definitely something that needs to be considered within trains, is the changing environment, because there's a big difference between having a fire alarm or a fire when you're speeding across the beautiful open plains in Europe, considering being halfway through the Gotthard Tunnel, where dozens of kilometers from either end, and in a huge risk situation. So there's definitely not only changing environments within the train, but and the temperature requirement, but then the actual position of that train can also have an impact and bring additional requirement or responsibility onto that fire safety system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's really interesting, at least from my perspective, to understand how it can change and some of those different applications. So, Carsten, thank you so much, as always, for your time and for joining us today. And thank you to all of you out there as well for joining us here on Buildings of Tomorrow. Please feel free to like, comment, or share this episode. Subscribe to us here on this channel, and ensure to keep an eye out to see the next episodes as they come up. So we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.